When we think about giving effective feedback, there's really two things we need to think about. One is the quantity of the feedback that we're giving, and the other is the quality of the feedback that we're giving. So let's start with the quantity of feedback. So here's a continuum that's going to go on the left from poor performance all the way over to outstanding performance. And then let's put this line here that represents our expectation for someone's performance. So there's this whole potential continuum of performance, and then you see the vertical line where we think people should be performing. So the question is, where do we tend to give feedback? And the answer is that most of us give feedback here. We give feedback when people are not doing as well as we expect. And then we give feedback way over here on the right when they hit it so far out of the park that we can't help but give them positive feedback. But what you'll notice is that there is a piece of this spectrum that is unaccounted for in terms of feedback. And what's unaccounted for is where people are doing what they're supposed to and when they're doing a little better than what they're supposed to, a little better than our expectations. It turns out that people need feedback all along this continuum. Yes, you need to give people feedback for doing what they're supposed to if you want them to perform in an optimal way. So feedback should be all along this continuum. Now, based on no research whatsoever, but just on my observations, having worked with a lot of leaders for the last 20 years, my observation is that many leaders do not give enough constructive feedback, do not give enough feedback on that left side of the continuum, and that practically nobody gives enough positive feedback, which is the feedback on the right side of that expectation line. The research disagrees a little bit, but there is a rule of thumb as to how many positive and constructive feedback messages, what that ratio should be. And the ratio is either 7-to-1 positive to constructive or 9-to-1 positive to constructive. And I know many of you now are thinking, oh my gosh, before I say one constructive thing, I have to say 9 positive things? No, that's not how it works. But what that model says, that 7-to-1 or 9-to-1 ratio says, is that if you are giving people feedback on a regular and consistent basis, you will in fact be giving more positive feedback than you're giving constructive feedback. That even the worst performer that you have probably is doing more things right than they're doing wrong. Now, you want to keep your feedback proportional. You don't throw someone a parade for coming into work on time, but if it's important that they come into work on time, you give them feedback on that, and you let them know that that's what you expect and that they're doing what you expect. So that's the quantity of feedback. Now, the other challenge we have is with the quality of feedback that we give. A lot of us think that we're giving feedback and we're not really giving feedback. So it turns out there's a lot of feedback models in the world, and if you boil them all down to their essence, in order for something to be feedback, it really has to include two things. It has to describe specifically what the person did or didn't do, and it needs to describe the impact, why it matters that they did or didn't do that. So let me give you a couple of examples here. So first, I'm going to give you an example that is neither specific nor describes the impact. So I have it here on the screen so you can see it as well. So the feedback is, Susan, I appreciate what you did today. Thanks. So that's a nice sentiment, but that's not feedback because Susan doesn't know specifically what she did and she doesn't know why it mattered that she did something. So this is what is often referred to as good dog feedback, because it's where you say, I appreciate it, I thank you, you're awesome, you rock, you're wonderful, good dog, good dog. But it doesn't have the information that Susan needs in order to either change her behavior or to continue her behavior. So let's look at another example. So here's the second example. Susan, I was late to the meeting today and you got it started without me. I really appreciate it. Thanks. So in this case, the person who's giving the feedback did include the specific of what Susan did. So I was late to the meeting, Susan got it started without me. So Susan knows specifically what she did that I appreciate and that I'm thankful for. So that's better but it's still not feedback, because in order for it to be feedback, it needs to have both the specific and describe the impact. So let's go ahead and look at one of those. So in this third piece of feedback, Susan, I was late to the meeting today. You got it started without me, which meant we could get everything done and still finish on time. I really appreciate it. Thanks. So this is feedback. And this is feedback because Susan knows what she did. I was late and she got the meeting started without me. And she knows why it matters. And she knows that I know why it matters that she did that. It matters in this case because we could get everything done and still finish on time. So sometimes when I talk to people about giving more feedback and giving higher quality feedback, they say they don't have time to give feedback. But think about how long it takes to say that third message. Susan, I was late to the meeting today. You got it started without me, which meant we could get everything done and still finish on time. I appreciate it. Thanks. What is that? 5 seconds? 8 seconds? It's not very long, but it includes the information that Susan needs in order to continue to be a good performer and in order to change her behavior, if that's what's needed, to be a better performer. All of those things are going to help her perform well. She's going to know that I'm someone who is concerned with improving her performance, and that is why feedback is so wonderful.